welcome, I'm Youre the Scrivener, and today I'm doing the Lucy Worsley tag. I am so excited. She's a British historian that I really like. I haven't watched all of her stuff, but I have watched it over years, and I always find them very informative and very fun. And Kara made this tag in celebration of her 3rd year anniversary on BookTube, and I'm so glad she's here. Like, thank you so much for your presence. Your presence, your friendship is a delight and wonderful. Like, if you like my content, then you should go check out her content because she's just like a better version of me, and not in like a shameful way. Like, you know, I like me, but like she's just more articulate and puts more time and effort into her videos, and like our reading taste as well as our perspective is very similar. So like, you want a more articulate, like well put together me, go to Kara. But she's awesome, so I'm very thankful for her, and I love that she loves history as me as well. So the first tag is Lucy Worsley's shows are known for being equal parts fun and informative. What's a nonfiction book that taught you a lot and was very engaging to read? So my first one is You're Not a Country, Africa by Pius Anasemi. This book is so friggin' amazing. It is also hilarious. So he has a lot of stuff in it. It's a collection of essays that looks at his own life, so autobiographical, but then he has like Nigerian politics and history, as well as looking at Africa as a country and as a continent, and how people oversimplifize, but also the connection of like brothers and sisters in different countries and similar pasts, and but also looking at the uniqueness of people groups and how there's many different people groups even in Nigeria, which is where he's from. And then he looks at racism in academia and him coming to Canada and him visiting the US and his stories there. And like one of the things, Sally, I'm forgetting her last name, it starts with B, I believe, and he writes an entire essay from her point of view, who was a woman who was known for having very large private parts, and those were dissected from her dead body and paraded through England and France and many other countries, I believe, and yet she's not talked about. And like when we talk about feminism and when we talk about dehumanization of women, he writes an entire essay about like why do we not speak about her? Why do you eliminate me? And often in like a very like satirical and funny way. I don't know how to describe his work as funny without reading it. But like one way is that I kind of summarized one of his sections saying about Prospero and like about how his actual line was like, you know, we can no longer call them slavers and colonizers, we call them the White House and the UN security like things and all of these things. And I'm like, he's literally saying we're not going through progress, we're just changing the names of wrongs and saying that it's progress. And yeah, he just has like a very slapstick thing, and it's like, you know, why is there no, like, when we talk about Black literature, why is there no African literature in there? And he's like, I know that there's 54 ones and all of these universities and all of these things, like, I can understand why you just did not have enough material. So yeah, very sarcastic, very funny, but also really engaging and really, really informative, and voices that I don't hear. Like, I don't know if there's more voices that I just didn't hear. I found this at a thrift store and was very lucky to find it. But other books I love are Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. This is a memoir in verse, so like, it shows her early childhood, and it's very immersive, but it's also very touching and also very beautifully written because it's poetry. And then some of my other favorites are Becoming by Michelle Obama, Civil Disobedience by Henry David Thoreau, and The Hiding Place by Cora ten Boom. The last one is not fun, but it is my most, probably the most important and favorite nonfiction of all time. So yeah, other two are both funny and engaging. Number 2, the shows always include a few segments where Lucy acts in costume as one of the historical or literary figures, a queen, a servant, a character in the novel, etc. Share one of your favorite plays or book featuring theater in some place. So I was going to talk about Hamlet and Much Ado About Nothing because they're my favorite Shakespeare plays, and then I realized Other Words for Home by Jasmine Warga. I freaking love this story. I'm going to say that a lot, but like, these are books that I love, obviously. This follows Jude. She's a 12-year-old Syrian refugee, and she goes to live with her uncle and aunt and cousin in Seattle, and she wants to be an actress. She loves watching movies, old movies, when she was in Syria with her best friend, and now she loves reading, watching, and wanting to be in a play here. Halfway through the semester, she gets her period and starts wearing a hijab, and they're like, and then she realizes she goes from casual racism to like very direct racism. And yeah, and one of the stories is like, well, if you're in hijab, like, I think it's Romeo and Juliet, I can't remember, it's been like almost 2 years since I read the book. I need to reread it and make notes because I was so overwhelmed with my emotions. I never wrote my review, and I just have like 7 pages of notes, so I really need to do that. But they were like, well, how can Juliet wear a hijab? And she's like, well, why not? Or like, why can you wear tights but you also wear a hijab? Like, and it's a lot of conversations about like her identity and stuff like that. It's not quite own voices because Jasmine Warga was born in the US, but her father was a refugee from Jordan, so she has it in her family. And then she was listening to her cousins, I believe, who a lot of the stories written on. Anyways, but it's a very touching story, coming of age and identity and race and Islamophobia and all that stuff, and I really recommend it, but it also has the theater part in it. And then we have, it's hard to deny Lucy's passion for what she does. It's very clear that it's her dream job, and enthusiasm is irresistible. Pick 2 books with a character who is passionate about something like a hobby or area of study, one interest you share and one you do not, and why that character loves it so much. So the first one is Harleen by Stefan Cichik, which is psychology because it focuses on a backstory of Harley Quinn, and it is absolutely remarkable. The art, everything is wonderful. And I have to like put a thing on it because I need to make this rant. I make this rant in person, but I don't think I've ever made it on my channel. Someone who is doing therapy is not a doctor. They're not going to med school. So like, a psychologist is someone who gives meds. They do assessment and that's it. They do assessment and constellation and they give you meds, but they do not do ongoing therapy. And then a psychologist is someone who becomes a doctor through getting a PhD in psychology or social work. They do not go to med school. They can still do therapy, but most people get that later in their career. Most people that are ongoing therapists are like masters, people who have a master's in social work or a master's in psychology. They do not, in fact, they're not doctors. Like, maybe that's different in the US and that's just a Canadian thing, but like, no, those are all three different things. And like, yeah, it's just very irritating for me whenever they mention med school. I'm like, no, they would not be doing therapy. And also, like, yeah, the most people that I know who had like a doctorate in psychology, they finished it like near the time they retired. So like, take that where you would. Is most people when you're doing therapy, you do not have time to do ongoing doctorate stuff. Anyways, and then City of Girls, Vivian loves to sew. City of Girls is a wonderful book. It starts in 1940 and it follows her at 19 who doesn't know what she does. She's dropped out of college, whatever, but she loves doing fashion and she loves doing things. So she does it for a local figure. I could also do this for art. And it is an incredible story. I love story that follows them through generations, and it follows her until 2010, somewhere like that, where she's an older woman, and it is a marvelous story. 4. Lucy's commentary always skillfully balances history and concept. She keeps true to the original material while also providing necessary context to humanity. What's an old book that surprises you with how modern and forward-thinking its ideas are? So the first is Yellow Wallpaper. I just reread it, and it's one of my favorite books. It is wonderful. It deals with mental health. Even though it was written 105 years before I was born, it hits me so much, and I felt seen. That and The Bell Jar are the two books that I felt most seen in my mental health, despite the fact that they were both published decades before I was born. And this is a line from it that I just really love. But these nervous troubles are dreadfully depressing. John does not know how much I really suffer. He knows there is no reason to suffer, and that satisfies him. Of course, it's only nervousness. It does not weigh on me, so not to do my duty in any way. I don't know if that fully makes sense, but like the idea that there is no reason to suffer, or that your pain like is not justified by other people. I don't know, for me, that it hits often the loneliness or the isolation of mental health so well. And then a dishonorable mention is Casino Royale by, what is even, Ian Fleming, that's his name, James Bond, first book. It's from 1953, and it is just sex upon sex upon sex upon sex. Like, the spy book ends halfway through the book, and then because he had dick torture during it, he was like, I need to make sure it actually works still. And then we have like 150 pages of just sex, and I'm like, I'm fine with sex. It's not my favorite thing in books, but like, I don't mind. But when like the plot stops and another half of the book is there, and it's like, what is the purpose of this? So darn frustrating. Okay, a very British romance. Books with any kind of romance element are often incorrectly dismissed and superficial. Share a book that has had a deeper depth that you did not expect. I can read. And it's a book that I did this on it. A Cruel Prince is a book that I dismissed because I was like, it's just one of those trashy YA books, which is terrible, and I should not think that. And yet, because internalized misogyny is a thing, and yeah, women cannot like romance. So the romance is, I don't know if I love the romance in it. It is fun, but I really loved it because it has a really complex trauma, because literally the person who killed her parents is the man who raises her. So like the man she calls father is also the murderer of her father and her mother. And that makes it very complex. And then we also have like, I don't know, just like going through trauma and processing it. We have so many politics, we have so many family dynamics, and it's just such a great series. And I loved the second one. Like, the second one is so good. The first and the third are both like good tier books, but the second one, excellent. Question number 6, The Six Wives with Lucy Worsley. Though you might have a favorite, each of these women is given the sympathy she deserves. Share a book that has multiple main characters. Ensemble Cast is one of my favorite, and Dear Edward by Anne Naptalanan, I can't say that Italian word, is really great. And I was deeply moved because like, we follow this boy who was the one survivor. He was 12 years old and he survived a plane crash. But then it's intersected with him coming to terms with his own trauma and finding peace, but also like that grief is okay to continue to have, in mixed with flashbacks with the passengers that do not survive. And it is wonderful. I want to read a piece of my review, even though I'm reading, sorry. I think that I can't word it off the cuff more than I did here. The passengers are all compelling. I kept on forgetting they would all die within hours, because I was invested in their stories, in their insecurities and their regrets, in their lives continuing. But we already know Belinda will never meet Gary at the airport. They will never marry. The child in her stomach will never have a chance at life. Benjamin will never come to terms with his sexuality. His pacing and his agitation of trauma will be silenced in minutes. He will never see the sun break on a new day where he can learn to help others overcome trauma and accept themselves. Mark will never prove he can live without cocaine, nor will he ever respect women. Veronica will never have a job where she does not have to trivialize sexual harassment to continue living. Jane will never write her quiet, dialogue-heavy film, nor will Bruce discover math that will lead to new inventions. Jordan will never send that text to Mahira. He will never defy the status quo or keep people from owning him because of his body will be lifeless in hours. His brother Eddie will never join him in puberty, nor will they ever be together in life, for Eddie will cease in hours and Edward will be born. Edward will continue to grow older than Jordan ever will. But Florida will, she will continue. With all their lives cease, she will be reborn, with Cinnamon in the end, the others only sparrows. It's such a beautiful book. It made me cry, like weep. It dealt with PTSD and trauma in one of the most beautiful ways I have ever done. And it also touched, as you can tell, on many, many aspects of life that I just didn't expect it to. it's a dang good book, and I don't think anything other than reading it can fully show that. And even though I knew that they were dying, I kept on forgetting they were dying because I was so invested in their stories. And that's me kind of summarizing parts of where they begin on this like 2 or 3 hour plane ride before, you know, the plane's final journey. And then, because I had to write a lot, question number 7, Suffragettes with Lucy. Sources about women's suffragist movements have often been limited in scope. Recommend a book that covered a famous era event from a different perspective. So I'm going to be reading, or talking about The Relented Fundamentalist by Machine Hamad. This looks at 9/11 from the view of a young Muslim woman who, he goes from a progressive Princeton grad, promising Princeton grad, to being a terrorist in everyone's eyes after, in one morning. And we follow his journey and what it looks like for him after that. And it is incredible, like so incredible. And then I also want to put, because I mentioned 9/11, I wanted to put, you know, Come From Away, which is a musical that I absolutely love, that look at the people who were stranded for a week in Newfoundland during when the borders closed after 9/11. And I have an entire video dedicated to me talking. It will be in a card. So brief apologies because my voice just keeps on getting higher and higher because I have a cold and I keep on ruining takes by coughing, so I'm trying not to breathe very deeply. But question number 8 is Lucy's royal myths and secrets. Several of the episodes have centered on showing how famously ineffectual or silly women such as Queen Anne or Marie Antoinette were in fact much more intelligent and capable than history gives them credit for. Name one of your favorite confident histories. I love Anne of Green Gables. I love Anne Shirley. She's my hero. Even probably more is Lucy Montgomery, her writer. There's literally an article from like 1912 or something where she visited the US, I think Boston, and they wrote the thing about how she was just like this bezillaed, like bewildered country girl who was just so excited to get back to the country because she just didn't like the buzz of the city. And she wrote this like scathing thing about like how wrong that was. I love her so much. She is one of my personal heroes, and I just look up to her, one of my first inspirations in reading and writing, and so much of what I take back on. And people often dismiss her and dismiss Anne of Green Gables as silly, even though Real Life Ingleside is literally the very first novel that ever, like the only novel that's written by a woman about the First World War, about someone who actually lived through it. And it's like a first-hand talk about the fact, just like she wrote World War I, and she was originally writing things in support of World War I, and by the end she was traumatized and like wrote about how much it just like it destroyed people, and like she committed suicide during World War II. A lot of people believe that she could not take the fact that it was happening again. Like the World Wars had a huge influence on her. The Blue Castle, which is a wonderful novel, like is a beautiful feminist novel. Like, Anyways, I could talk every day about Lucy Montgomery, but I do have some tags. So we have first Justin, Ghost Reader, and then we have Diana and Keller, the other Christine that reads, Amy Miles, the queen of nonfiction, and Shelby, Read and Find Out. So it's a funny story because I was literally like, I always forget people's channels names and only remember them by their names. I know it's opposite of a lot of other people's work, but I was like double checking on Twitter that I got everyone's channel names right. And at the top of my feed pops up Shelby and Amy talking about the fact that they need something to bring them back to BookTube. So this is my subtle thing that you should do these because tags are much easier than doing wrap-ups. I will maybe one do wrap-ups, but there's a lot I need to catch up on. Anyways, happy reading and writing. Let me know if there's any tags you want to do or anything like that, and I'll see you next time. Bye.